We appreciate you being here at 9 a.m. on a Saturday morning. We want to acknowledge that we are on stolen native land, the land of the Kalapuya peoples. We believe it's pronounced that way. And we never go anywhere without remembering that we are on someone else's land and that we are guests here. We are women of color speak out, not women of color who speak out, but that's okay, we don't hold grudges, it's fine. We are a climate justice group that was born out of Shell No. Shell No was a movement that started in Seattle and became regional and then worldwide, and it was to stop Shell from drilling in the Arctic. And we were following in the leadership of the first peoples of the Arctic. And so we were fighting in that struggle in solidarity with those first peoples in order to protect the Arctic and to protect their livelihoods and to protect their lives and the planet itself. So as such, we are direct action activists. As you can see, we are all women of color, and we specifically talk about climate change as something that has been caused by systems of oppression, because you can't fix anything without understanding what the root causes are in order to actually understand how to treat the problem. So that is who we are. The work that we do is raw and honest. And in order to do this work, we need to give you a trigger warning, okay? So we talk about deep historical trauma from all over the world in multiple scenarios. And that means we will use the word rape, we will talk about assault, we will talk about war, we will talk about violence, death, slavery, genocide, imprisonment, among other things. You may feel uncomfortable and defensive, and it's okay if you feel that way, okay? It's okay to feel that way. We don't want to be interrupted, okay? So if you feel that way, you need to take care of yourself, you need to step out, you need to get a drink of water. All of that is fine, do not interrupt us. Rules of engagement. If you have questions as we're talking, write them down, send them up to the front, and we will answer them in the Q&A. Make sure they are questions. Do not process at us, okay? And particularly if you are someone with privilege, if you are white, if you are male, do not process at people of color, not just here, but afterwards as well. It's very important to keep that in mind. So with all of that being said, yes, with all of that being said, I'm gonna start. My name is Zarna Joshi. I am a co-founder of Women of Color Speak Out. And what I do in particular is I talk about patriarchy as a root cause of all of the systems of oppression. And that is how we talk about the systems of oppression. So my platform is defending Mother Earth by smashing the patriarchy. So in order to understand why and how, I'm going to explain to you what patriarchy actually is, because most people do not really understand. But the way that we speak from our own personal stories, we speak from the wisdom that our elders have taught us. And what I was taught by my elders is that patriarchy comes from the ego. See, everyone has an ego. And our egos tell us we exist, right? And that's a good thing. We need to know we exist, right? But patriarchy takes it further. Patriarchy is the system of power that convinces you that not only do you exist, you are a body, and you are only a body. Patriarchy is that system of power that convinces you of that and reinforces that message at every opportunity, in every moment. So if you think that you're only a body, your number one priority is to get things for your body. And that means that whatever possible powers and privileges that you can amass for yourself to get things for your body, you will enforce those privileges. So if you're male, you will enforce that privilege over people who are not male. If you have a particular skin color, in this system, it's white. If you have that skin color, you will enforce that privilege over people who don't have that skin color. If you're cis, you will enforce that cis privilege over people who are not cis. If you're straight, you will enforce that straight privilege. If you're rich, you will enforce that rich privilege over people who are not rich. If you're able-bodied, you will enforce that able-bodied privilege over people who do not have the abilities that you have. If you're human, you will enforce that human-bodied privilege over those who do not have that privilege. So, patriarchy is the root cause of capitalism, colonialism, racism, speciesism, ableism, rape culture, right? We go onto people's lands and we say, we're going to take this, and we don't care whether or not you consent. If we say, we want to sexually exploit these bodies, we don't care whether or not you have a problem with that. We don't care whether or not you consent. We want this labor to be done, and we're going to force you to labor, and we don't care whether or not you have a problem with that. We're going to make you work for us. That is what patriarchy is. And it's very important to understand this, because if you don't understand it from that perspective, you are going to make the same mistakes that have been made by white feminism. Okay? White feminism does not dismantle patriarchy. White feminism props it up. White feminism props up the supremacy of white women over women of color. It props up the white supremacy of cis women over trans people, over queer people. It props up ableism over people who don't have those abilities, and on and on and on. That's why you see white women with their pink pussy hats, right, shaking the hands of the cops, thanking them for protecting them, but it's only white women who get protected, and even that's a lie, right? Because in a patriarchal system that is reinforced in every way, and that message that you are your body, and if you are in a black or brown body, if you are in a non-male body, if you're in a poor body, you will be exploited and dominated and controlled by the system, and the cops are one way that they do that. So that's one thing that's very critical to understand. And I'm going to give you some examples of how this plays out in the environmental movement. Some of the cases, some of the campaigns that I've been part of, we're direct action activists. So we've risked arrest, right? We've been on the front lines. We continue to be on the front lines in multiple ways. As women of color, we're always on the front lines. And one of the campaigns that I have been part of is the oil train campaign, right? And in the oil train campaigns that I was part of, I was always very careful to advocate that the people risking arrest, the people locking down, right? The people who are actually putting their bodies on the line, almost certain or pretty much definite that they will be arrested. I advocated for only white people to be doing that, right? I advocated for people with the most privileges, people who were middle class, people who had a decent job, people who were respectable, because those people are the people most likely to be protected from a rape culture. They're most likely to be protected from a police brutality state. That's critical. And many of the campaigns, many of the actions that I was part of, that is exactly what happened. It was middle class people, it was white people, it was cis people who were the ones who put themselves on the line, which meant that when they went to trial, they got a much better deal. They got a much better deal. Another example was we were at Standing Rock. And Standing Rock was a place where it wasn't just white people who were risking. In fact, it was specifically indigenous people, indigenous women, indigenous youth, queer and trans indigenous people, two-spirit people, people of color who were risking themselves, who were putting themselves on the line. And because of that, the atmosphere at Standing Rock was much different. It was much different. At Standing Rock, you didn't just get a direct action training. At Standing Rock, you got a training in what to do if you get raped in prison. That was the difference between Standing Rock and an action with white people locking down in Seattle. Because people of color and indigenous people know that we are not our bodies. We know that. But we know that because we're in these bodies, we will be targeted. And we know that because patriarchy comes from the ego, this is a spiritual problem. And in order to confront that spiritual problem, you have to understand you are more than your body. You have to understand you are part of a biodiverse collective. And in that biodiverse collective, you will have to risk your body. People of color and indigenous people and women and queer and trans people who are in this struggle, who are radical, decolonizing organizers, know this. That's why the leadership must come from them. That's why to smash the patriarchy, you must be listening to those people. And as people working in the law, with the law, in these particular types of actions, with these particular cases, it's important for you to have an analysis of patriarchy. So that instead of being at the Women's March in a pink pussy hat, which is not only racist, because not all vaginas are pink, but we are not pussies. That's objectifying. That's reinforcing the message that you are a body. You are not a body, you are much more than a body. And, of course, it was transphobic. It was excluding people who don't have vaginas. But that's not what this movement is about. That's not what the heart of this movement is about. So the leadership must come from the people who understand that. And so, with that, I will hand it to Sarah. Thank you.